Individuals comprise interpersonal relationships. Each person has attributes that can influence how relationships are developed and maintained. Minimally speaking, two people comprise a relationship. Compatibility between the two individuals can be a key for a harmonious relationship. If two people are incompatible, it will be difficult to stay in the relationship. Simply speaking, symmetry and complementarity are two main ones that have been discussed as determining compatibility. Taking a romantic relationship as an example, think about what kind of partner you are looking for. When your friend asks you, what type of a person do you want to date? And when you come up with some list, examine each item on your list, whether each item represents symmetry or complementarity. By symmetry, we usually mean similarity. For example, because I like dogs, I want my partner to like dogs as well. Because I have a graduate degree, I think I will have more pleasant conversation with someone with a graduate degree. Are you looking for someone who is similar to you? Or are you looking for someone who can complete the union to be, so to speak, full? If so, you are seeking complementarity from your partner. For example, because I do not like cooking, I want to marry someone who enjoys cooking. Because I'm a quiet person and an introvert, I want to be with someone chatty, an extrovert. There is not one perfect answer on what determines a perfect level of compatibility. But individuals can be quite different in what they value for symmetry or complementarity. When we see examples like this, we see that for some people, complementarity is more important than similarity. And for other people, similarity is more important than complementarity. When we see examples like these, we may sometimes wonder if the relationship will work or how long the relationship will last. On a simple level, the examples shown in this slide may indicate incompatibility. Well, the answer to these questions may not be simple, however. Many numerous attributes comprise one person. Your attitudes, views, personalities, hobbies, habits, and so on are some of those attributes you have. We possess many individual differences. However, when we make interpersonal relationships with others, we do not consider everything about ourselves and our potential partners. And we cannot. There are too many. So we tend to settle for a few aspects that we think important for good relationships. For some people, same religion is the number one in compatibility. For some people, same hobbies are important. For some people, dating someone having much more money than I do, is an important complementary factor for compatible relationship. Recently, I heard a conversation between two opposite sex friends. They are just friends. We, as a group of several people, were discussing which restaurant to go. These two friends of mine discovered that they have highly similar preferences in foods that many others do not like. Half jokingly, one friend told the other person, "In our next lives, let's get married." I guess that food preferences became an important compatibility issue for that person in his own life in this current life. We have sayings like these, as shown in this slide. These types of sayings are quite universal. Many nations, cultures, language groups have expressions like these. Which one do you support most? One of many individual differences we will examine is self-esteem. Simply speaking, this pertains to how I feel about myself. If you see yourself as a worthy and good person, you have a good amount of self-esteem. If you constantly feel that you are a failure, you may have low self-esteem. There has been debate among scholars what amount of self-esteem is a healthy one. In the past, there were this movement in education that teachers and parents should instill high self-esteem in children. So, constant praise and encouragement were used even when some children did poorly. For example, every child in a competition gets a ribbon. No one is allowed to be seen as finishing the last. But then, some researchers have started to show warning evidence that too high self-esteem may lead to self-entitlement. Self-entitled individuals are described as someone who think they deserve everything without earning it. For example, self-entitled individuals may say things implicating that, like the alphabet I comes before you. What's yours is mine, what's mine is my own. Expectation of privilege is so great, it leaves equality feeling like oppression. When self-entitled person gets angry, he or she feels his or her anger is justified. Self-esteem has implications for our relationships and communication. We may not notice much communication difficulties at the beginning of our relationship with extremely high and also extremely low self-esteem people. But both high and low self-esteem people tend to constantly crave for praise and react very negatively to criticisms. Even some passing comments which did not mean much, or even some jokes, can hurt both high and low self-esteem people. Their grudges can make later conversation and interaction much more difficult. If you have excessive levels of self-esteem, then you positively evaluate yourself to the extreme. You may praise yourself too much even when it's not deserved, or you expect others to do the same. When you have self-esteem that is too high, you are likely to be overconfident and overestimate your abilities, attitudes, and skills. Your opinion of yourself becomes overblown and unrealistic. People who have too much self-esteem may feel entitled and so self-absorbed that they lose sight of others. If you think too highly of yourself, you may suffer from unhealthy relationships. Interestingly, this can manifest in a similar way to people who have low self-esteem. When your self-esteem is low, you may crave praise from others in order to feel validated. Similarly, when your self-esteem is too high, you may also be needy in this way, since you have a self-image that you feel has to be verified. This can push away potential or existing partners and friends, especially if praise is not given, and you react in an angry or harsh manner. When you are communicating with too high or too low self-esteem person, you have to tiptoe around that person. You gotta be extra careful with what you say to that person. In the previous slide, I explained to you about how self-esteem can influence our relationship with others. How difficult it can be when dealing with high or low self-esteem person. Self-evaluation maintenance model, on the other hand, says that relationships themselves can influence our self-esteem. It explains why it is important to have good and healthy relationships with your siblings, parents, when you were young. Also, it explains why it is important to have good and healthy relationships with our friends and romantic partners, and so on. Self-evaluation maintenance model says that there are two processes by which our self-esteem or self-evaluation can go up or down. The first is by comparison. The success of a close other can decrease someone's self-evaluation in the comparison process. This is because the success of a close other invites comparison on one's own capabilities, thereby directly affecting one's own self-evaluation. This is also strengthened with the closeness of the psychological relationship with the successful other. If a sibling scores the winning goal in an important game, the person is now comparing himself or herself to the sibling's success, and through comparison, his or her self-evaluation is lowered. When closeness and performance are high, self-evaluation is decreased in the comparison process. A person's self-evaluation, which is similar to self-esteem, may be raised when a close other performs well. For example, a sibling scores the winning goal in an important game. Self-evaluation will increase because that person is sharing his or her success. The closer the psychological relationship, the greater the success, the more a person will share in the success. When closeness and performance are high, self-evaluation is raised in the reflection process. If someone who is psychologically close performs well on a task that is irrelevant, not relevant to a person's self-definition, that person is able to benefit by sharing in the success of the achievement. Some of you have heard that parents tell one of their kids something like, "Look at your sister, she's doing so well in school. Why can't you be like your sister? Why you should do more to be like your sister so that I can be proud of both of you." In statements like this, parents are using the comparison process, probably lowered the kid's self-evaluation. But then, if you look at your sister who is doing well in academic achievement, and you do not really care about academic achievement itself, and you are doing very well in sports, you may be proud of your sister and glad to be with having a sister. Your sister may also be proud of you, who wins medals in many sports events. This slide shows a summary of what I discussed in the previous slide. If we are in the comparison process, the success of a close other can decrease our self-esteem. But in the reflection process, a person's self-evaluation may be raised when a close other performs well. Here's the answer for the blank. Have you seen this movie? It is a 2018 American romantic musical drama film. If you have not seen this movie, a little bit of spoiler. One way to analyze this movie is that how self-evaluation changes as the relationship progresses and why the character played by Bradley Cooper did what he did toward the end of the story in the movie. In the beginning of the movie, reflection was in operation, but toward the end, comparison process kicked in. Relevance determines whether reflection or comparison will occur. If someone who is psychologically close performs well on a task that is not relevant to a person's self-definition, that person is able to benefit by sharing in the success of the achievement. If relevance is high, then one will engage in comparison. But if relevance is low, one will engage in reflection. Closeness and performance can either raise self-evaluation through reflection or lower self-evaluation through comparison. People may do things to reduce the decrease in self-evaluation from comparison. One can spend less time with that particular individual, thereby reducing reducing closeness. Sorry about that. Let me repeat that. One can spend less time with that particular individual, thereby reducing closeness. Or one can change their important self-definition and take up a new hobby or focus on a different self-defining activity, which reduces relevance. Third way of avoiding decrease in self-evaluation through the comparison process is to affect another person's performance. For example, you can hide a sibling's favorite shoes or believe that his or her performance was based on luck. Fourth thing that you can reduce the decrease in self-evaluation from comparison is that one can improve their own skills by practicing more. This theory poses the question, under what conditions will someone get in the way of another's performance? The answer is that it depends on closeness of the individuals and the relevance of the activity. When the relevance is high, the comparison process is more important than the reflection process. When the relevance is high and the activity is high in self-defining importance, the other person poses a larger threat than when the relevance is low.